What is up, BookTube? It is me, it is Monty, and today I am back again, once again, with the start of another video. I am doing my worst books of 2023, and I'm going to say worst. It's called worst. To be honest with you, I read a lot of very good books last year, a lot of books that I enjoyed reading, a lot of books that I have fond memories of. Not so many books that sitting here January 1st, 2024, I don't really have a lot of animosity towards books in the same way that I had, in 2023 when I was making my worst video, or in 2022. And even like looking back at the history of my channel, coming up with like 10 books, like a big list of books that I just have like unadulterated hatred towards, that I really feel warrant being on a worst books list, has always been pretty small. And so I'm going to run through some books that I just didn't like, that I don't think anybody should read, but really only one. We're going to save the worst for last. Like, it's definitely number one. And it's definitely the most unpopular opinion on the list, I think, because I keep seeing it pop up in people's best of lists, and it's pretty highly rated. So that is also, actually, I take it back. My actual worst book of 2023, I'm not going to talk about. And I'm going to talk about the idea of the project, but we'll get to that right before I get to my actual number one. But those two, they could probably fight it out for first place, honestly. So we'll get to those when we get to those. So first thing I want to talk about is by the book Jasmine Gillery. This was supposed to be a Beauty and the Beast retelling, and I think that Beauty and the Beast retellings, everyone says this, they've been done to death. I still like to hold out hope that you can do it justice, right? I just don't think the justice for me is making Isabel, our main character, and she works in publishing. She's like an editorial assistant kind of a person. And she finds herself in Los Angeles for a convention of some kind, where she's like, you know what? We have an author who was supposed to be giving us a memoir, and I've been emailing them since I started at this company a year ago. And we haven't seen a page, haven't seen a synopsis, haven't seen nothing about this memoir, not even like a response to the email. I'm working on it. So what if I just pop up to Santa Barbara, which honestly is, it's not a crazy long drive, but okay, ma'am. So she's going to pop up to Santa Barbara. She's going to check in on this author, and it becomes a romance. And I think there were two things that were weird to me. First, I couldn't understand why this man was even writing a memoir. Like, what was he supposed to have done in his life? Like, it didn't get the vibe that he was also an actor. It gave the vibe that his parents had been successful, and suddenly this publishing house wanted to spend $2 million on his memoir. Okay. Like, I think he was supposed to have been like a fixture of the tabloids earlier in his career, but at this point he just like stayed at home and ran a foundation. So, okay, sure. And the foundation was a secret. Like, no one even seemed to know about this foundation that he was running. So it wasn't even like, oh, he's like a reform bad boy. What are we doing? Anyway, so he's supposed to be doing this. She pops up and he refuses to see her. He's like, no, fam, I don't want to do that. So when she's leaving, his assistant sprains her ankle. And Isabel's like, oh my goodness, I had to help you back up to the house because you sprained your ankle. And in doing that, she like talks her way into staying for the weekend. And then after that weekend, she talks her way into staying for the week. And then she stays for a month and then another month. And it's just, at no point did I really feel like these two were forming a connection. It really felt like he was abusing her verbally in just like really weird ways. Like, she was there to like be a punching bag so that he could maybe at some point write this book that I didn't understand like why he wanted to write the book. And then when we found out why he wanted to write the book, I was like, that's not really a memoir. Like, you could just literally publish that on, I don't know, like go to the Hollywood Reporter, be like, can I get a guest column on the Hollywood Reporter? Like, what he was writing didn't even make sense to be like a full-length book. But then, she eventually does go back to New York where she's supposed to be living, and he writes her a letter because, he's finished his memoir. So he writes her a letter and he's like, oh my goodness, I was in love with you from the very first day. It was just a bunch of foolishness. So I didn't really like this one, and I was kind of let down because I went into this knowing that Jasmine Gillery writes closed door romance, and this was a series that is like published by Disney using their IP to like retell their, these classic stories. And so I figured that like a person who writes closed door romance, this is obviously going to work well in this line that is supposed to be, traditionally published closed door romance. And it just was bad. I didn't really feel like she did anything interesting with the canon, like with the Disney IP, like these classic characters. It just felt like a very generic romance. And if you told me that Jasmine Gillery just had this book lying around and she just dusted it off and like maybe changed a couple of things, I would believe it, because as a to, to fit the contours of a Beauty and the Beast romance, I feel like this was just foolishness. And Isabel was a sad, pitiful character who both deserved better and I did not want to read from. So didn't like that book. Easily the worst Beauty and the Beast retelling that I've read this year. Hate to see that. Another retelling that I didn't really like this year was Thief Liar Lady. I forget who wrote this. I read it as an arc, and this was supposed to be like, what if Cinderella was like a spy or assassin kind of a story where we follow Cinderella after her marriage to the prince. And I felt like this had a lot to say, and it didn't have it both had a lot to say, nothing to say at the same time. Like this idea of like Cinderella finessing her way into the prince's life was foolish. There was like this backdrop for a war that was supposed to be happening. It was just a lot of ideas for a single solitary standalone book. And so Thief Liar Lady was also a miss for me this year. What else do I have over here that I didn't put in my list? Anything by Ashley Winstead. I feel like that was my number 4 on this list, but we'll get to Ashley Winstead in a second. To Paradise, Hani Yanagihara. In my infinite wisdom, I allowed this to sneak into a Patreon pick poll, so I would have to read it for a daily or like a weekly vlog over there. And so I read To Paradise. And once again, Hani Yanagihara just really hates black people. I don't know what it is. I don't know what we ever did to her, but some black person spit in her oatmeal one too many times or something, because she just hates us. She hates us with a burning passion. And this was a weird one. It takes place over several generations in several different, it's both our world, but obviously clearly not our world. Like even like the first story set in the past, and in the past is like a queer normative society in a way, but of course she also, in addition to hating black people, she hates the gays. And so we have that moment, and then there's something more akin to like the 1950s, and we're in Hawaii. And I feel like that was probably the strongest part of the narrative, was when we were in Hawaii. And then we flash forward to the far future and we are back in New York. And it was very messy. It didn't really feel like a novel, even if it was like playing with structure or whatever people like to say when things are literary. It just felt like a lot of ideas. Definitely there was a thread connecting them. Like the 3 timelines are connected in a way that is more than just, I thought they were connected by the similar house that everyone was living in, but there's other things that connect them. But when I thought about what connected them and I thought about how it was executed, it was just a hot mess. I feel like To Paradise got called out a lot more than A Little Life did. I feel like nobody was eating up To Paradise in the way that they ate up A Little Life. I feel like people were onto her bullshit then. And I feel like more of y'all need to be onto her bullshit, because To Paradise was a bad book. Lone Women by Victor Laval was also a bad book. I better read this one with Aaron. Apparently we're doing a lot more buddy reading in the new year, so keep your fingers crossed that they are more successful. But this was the story of Adelaide, a woman who was, I think, originally from California. And at the beginning of the book, we see her leaving the California ranch that she had been living on with a mysterious trunk headed to Montana. She has always had an affinity for the state of Montana. Her birthday and the day that Montana became a state are on the same day. And at this point in American history, if you just show up to Montana and you live there for a certain amount of time and you use your little homestead, then you get to own the land. You don't have to like pay any kind of physical money. And so she is going there for that, to get these homestead rights. And we see her falling into some complications with some white settlers and this mysterious trunk. And then there's like this eerie, maybe horrific element also at play. And while all the threads came together, it was just not for me. It was boring. I didn't really get the atmosphere. I didn't care about Adelaide as a character. I didn't care about the things that she was going on. I definitely didn't give 2 fucks about the trunk once we found out what was inside the trunk. So all in all, I feel like this just added up to a collection of things that I did not care about. The next thing I'm going to talk about, anything by Ashley Winstead that I read this year. Fool Me Once, The Boyfriend Candidate, Midnight is the Darkest Hour. All of them are horrible, horrible books. Fool Me Once was just a very bland romance I did not care for. Here we have a heroine who works in political consulting. She's something of a wild child, and she's kind of like determined to reform her. She's trying to reform. So she used to be like this hookup girl. She doesn't really want to be the hookup girl anymore. And she's working at the governor's mansion. She's working for, the state of Texas, trying to greenify their infrastructure. And then we see her love interest come into play, and we find out that that was her college boyfriend. And spoiler alert, I'm just going to ruin this book for you. We find out that this man, even though he moved away, was currently engaged and had a whole life that he had built for himself. Like, he was buying a house, he was going to have like a whole new family with this woman that he was engaged to, had actually just been like secretly in love with his college girlfriend for years and years, even though she broke his heart and he just really wanted to fuck her. And so they start cheating. It's just cheating, really. And I don't mind cheating in books, but to me, it was just so unserious to have this man who had like clearly moved on, and then the plot twist is actually he never moved on and he just was in love with this woman. It was just sad. It was very pathetic to me. I didn't. You're not gonna make me root for someone who is so pathetic. Like, at the end of the day, like, it's nice that you two are so pathetic. You can just be pathetic together. Go on and live your life. Then we have the boyfriend candidate who follows the sister from the heroine in Fool Me Once. And she is a librarian. She's just, she's a homebody. And so she's trying to, I don't know if she's trying to get out more, but she decides that she is going to go out more. And through a series of events, her trying to get out more winds up with her almost hooking up with the new, like, a person who's running for governor. And so this person is like, well, we're already in the newspaper and people already don't take me seriously because I'm a little bit of a younger candidate. So what if we just pretend to date, and then maybe, I don't really know what this woman was supposed to get out of it. I think at the end of the day, like, he was going to try and lobby for like more funding for education. But at the end of the day, like, she was doing a lot of labor for him. Like, we saw her campaigning more than we saw him campaigning. And so it was just like, it felt very asymmetrical in that whole setup. But also his plan just seemed very stupid, that this idea that they were just going to secretly present themselves as like having been in a serious committed relationship, even though these two people had never interacted, and it'd be very obvious for them to interact. But then you would think that would be the stupid part of the book. But no, what happens is our heroine from the first book is now a state senator, and she carries some level of sway. And so our hero is like, I need your sister to endorse me, because if she endorses me, I may be able to clinch the election. But in order to get the endorsement, her sister wants her, our main character in this book, I don't know what her name was, to go on a date with somebody, to go on a date with her boyfriend's, I think her boyfriend's, or now was her fiance or her husband's brother. And it's like, ma'am, she is publicly dating someone who is running for elected office. And the whole reason she is publicly dating this man is because the public was made aware of them being together. And so now your bright idea is for her to go out on a date with some other person. And so our heroine is like, you know what, bet. And she eventually does go on this date, and she is photographed, and it becomes a whole scandal. And this man doesn't win the election. It's just a bunch of foolishness in this book. It was dumb. Then we got on to Midnight is the Darkest Hour. And in this book, we are following yet another fucking librarian. This time we're in, I want to say, Louisiana. And we're following her. She's lived a very sheltered life. She's the daughter of the town pastor, and she has some secrets in her life. She has some secrets in her life. She wants to stay secret. One of those secrets is this little boy that she used to run around with, and he comes back into her life. And this book is just chock full of a meditation on Twilight. I think that Ashley Winstead has been meditating on this book for a long time. I think that she sat out the, the mid 2000s, late 2010s meditation on Stephanie Meyer and Is She or Is She Not a Horrible Person. She sat all of that out, and she said, I am going to bide my time. And she bid her time, and she came out with this book, and she gave it to us all. And some of the meditation was interesting, and some of the meditation was boring. Overall, I feel like this book was supposed to be eerie, kind of but it was worse. It was her really marrying her thrillers, which are bad, with her romances, which are worse, and culminating in a book that just ends. The book just ends, and it's supposed to be open-ended, but honestly, I don't care. I don't care if they survive. I don't care if they die, because the entire book, I did not care about anything that was happening. So Ashley Winstead and I are breaking up, in theory. In 2024, she's supposed to be coming out with a book that it sounds like a Monty book, but Austin and Emily, the little breakup tour sounded like a Monty book, and that was also bad. So I might just be able to not read the Ashley Winstead. I might just continue to put her on pause. The next worst book that I read is easily Age of Vice by Deepti Kapoor. This was another buddy read with Aaron, and this book I feel like was a flash in the pan. It might have been a Good Morning America pick, but it kind of was everywhere, I thought, and then I've seen it nowhere. I don't think did it pop up in the Goodreads Awards? I've forgotten already. I haven't seen it. I've been avoiding people's best of the year videos and things, but I haven't seen it in like the blurred out backgrounds in the thumbnail. I haven't seen it in any thumbnail. So I feel like this was a flash in the pan. Everyone was reading it, and then they weren't. So this one is, it's hard to talk about this one because you go into this. What does this synopsis say on Goodreads? I have it open over here. At the beginning of the year, everybody was touting this as giving it Greenbone Saga vibes because the book opens up with a character. I think it's like the chauffeur. The chauffeur is driving and they kill somebody. And you're like, what? And so you think it's going to be like I don't want to say a real life, but like a contemporary version of the Greenbone Saga where you're following this high profile family that is maybe in some gang activity, if you will, but we're in India and not a fictional East Asian country. I guess, was it South Asian? I don't know. In a fictional Asian country versus real life India. But you follow this chauffeur for part of the book, and you're reading the story of the chauffeur and why he took the fall for the person who was actually driving the vehicle and how he came to be the chauffeur. And you're reading about his life. I think his name is Sunny. One of the characters in this book is Sunny, but you're reading about the chauffeur and you're reading about him in prison, and you get to read a lot of horrible things like characters getting raped, characters, starving, characters are being murdered. Obviously, it's like gang activity. You hate to see it, but then eventually his chapters are over and we switch to a different character, and then we are following a journalist who is easily the stupidest journalist in all of journalism. Like, there's a point in the book where she is being where she is told like she is probably going to be taken out, like she is in danger, and she decides she's going to drive across the country or across the state, the province, wherever they are in India, to this building to demand a meeting with somebody. I think it was the little person who actually committed the murder earlier in the book. And she's going to drive there. And then she just falls asleep in the waiting room. And then she's driving back and she just notices this person is following her. And she's just like, oh my goodness. She should have been taken out. She should have been in the head, just gone by for how stupid she was. And overall, what we're reading about is eventually you come to discover that the chauffeur and this other perspective that we get and this journalist, it's not really about them so much as their perspective on the actual main character of the book, but we don't ever get their perspective on the events that are occurring. It's just the people around them and how we see how this person has impacted all these other people. It's in theory, it's an interesting idea. At some point, it was floated or people were saying this was going to be a multiple book thing. I'm not going to read the other books. This book was very long. It was very boring. It's one of those, like, I want to say I read a lot of long books because I was looking at my spreadsheet and I don't. But I'm not a stranger to long books. Like, a book being, 1,000 pages or a book being 500 pages or 800, whatever it is, isn't going to make me not read the book. I'm not deterred by length. But this one, it felt long. It felt like it was taking me forever to read, even though I was listening and I was getting through it. So neither Aaron or I enjoyed our experience with this one. I don't think either one of us would have recommended this book to anybody. The next worst book I read this year was Kiss Her Once for Me by Allison Cochran. Allison Cochran and we're not reading each other anymore. Again, like, this is another author I have to step away from. This is another one where in theory I could understand it, but I feel like the actual setup is a little bit foolish. Here we're following a character whose name I've also forgotten because these people just really be meaning nothing to me. So here we're following Ellie, and Ellie is from the Midwest, but Ellie came to Seattle to work for Leica, and she's been laid off by Leica. And so she's been sustaining herself in, is it Seattle or is it Portland? Portland. So now she's in Portland and she's working as a barista. She's been working there as a barista for a hot second. And she doesn't really like her job, but she figures that this is the best she can do for right now. She's trying to maneuver into other things. One day, the landlord for the building comes in, and her and this landlord start flirting. They're hitting it off, and they agree to go on a date. And you're like, okay, bet. I love this. Eventually, this is, I feel like, the part that is very important to people. She and the landlord have a mutual attraction to one another. And I feel like in the selling of this book, the pitching of this book, it was always, to me, brought up as this landlord and her agree to fake date to fake marriage of convenience, so the landlord gets his inheritance, and he'll break some of that off for her. So she's going to get a substantial chunk of money out of this. I think a couple $100,000 or something. And he gets, his multi-million-dollar inheritance and, a seat at the table for the largest retail person in Portland or whatever. Like being on the realtor board or whatever it is that his granddaddy left him. But again, I think it's very important. There was a mutual attraction. They were actually on a date. They were having a good time. And that's why they agreed to fake date and get married, because they're already on a date. And it was established that Ellie had a crush on this man. Like she wanted to get digged down. I feel like that's very important and very much left out of this book. But whatever, they agree to do this. And he's like, it's even perfect because my family always gets together for Christmas. So you're going to come with me to the family Christmas party. It'll make it even more believable when we say we're getting married. So she's like, bet, I'm going to go. Fast forward to them getting to the palatial, place up in the in the Portland mountains where the snow is falling and Christmas time is here. And our main character, Ellie, runs into Jack. Now, Jack was a character that Ellie met a year ago at a bookstore where they were both going for, I think it was like Fun Home or something. They were both going for the same little bookie book. And they had an instant attraction and they spent one magical Christmas together. And Ellie, who was normally, I think she identifies as a demisexual. And even though Ellie has dated other people and in 5 years of dating somebody, she never felt comfortable enough to smash. In this one magical Christmas day, her body was like, yes, there's an instant mind-body connection to this person. And I just want to let's go. Let's hit the hay. And so they walk around the city, they get stuck in the snow, they do fun little activities, and they smash in her little trailer. And after they smash in the trailer, there's like a miscommunication moment where they're not really understanding what the other person wants, and so Ellie decides she's just going to bounce.
Hi, it's Editing Monty here with a little update to this, because I also think it's important to note that, again, spoiler warning for Kiss Her Once for Me, in case you have avoided this Christmas-themed romance 2 Christmases in a row now. But it's not a miscommunication that happens at that trailer. Jack is married. Jack has a wife, and Jack's partner, wife, person shows up while Jack is in the shower. And Ellie is like, oh, bitch, you're married? And she bounces embarrassed. And a year later, Jack is talking all kinds of, yeah, I wasn't really in love. Like, we were seeing other people. My wife wanted an open relationship, and I didn't really want an open relationship. But when I saw you at the bookstore, when I saw you there, when you saw you in the bookstore, in the light of the bookstore, I said, you know what? I do want an open relationship. And so I smashed you. But it didn't work out. And I left my wife, and now I want you. Fucking foolishness. So that's what happened. That's why their magical Christmas ended when it did, because the bitch was married.
Or whatever happens there. But here they are brought back together at this magical Christmas party, and now they're going to have to be around each other for the Christmas season. And really the book focuses on her and Jack's relationship because it is a sapphic romance. So, I get that. But I also felt that there should have been some time in this book where Ellie and this man that she showed up to the party with were supposed to be faking it for the family. And I feel like that never happened. And Ellie and Jack were foolish, in my opinion. And I thought it was fucking stupid. And it felt stupid to me because it was like, at no point did I think that if I was, the family member, if I was, the absentee dad or the one of the grandmothers that's here or whoever, and I was looking at this, to me it was very obvious that Ellie and Jack are out here fucking around. And Ellie and this man, what are we doing? Like, weird. It just felt very weird. It would have, if I was, this wealthy family, it would have raised some red flags. It would have been like, this is weird. Clearly you're a gold digger. I want you out of my house for Christmas. It was so unbelievable. It was just unbelievable. It was foolishness. It was stupidity. It was everything that I don't like in a romance novel. And so for me, Kiss Her Once is a failure of a book. Now we got our top 2. So 2023, part of me accepting failure was I had this idea at the beginning of the year that I was going to read everything by Brandon Sanderson. And spoiler alert, I didn't do that. But in 2024, I'm going to make it happen. And so honorable mention for worst book of the year is going to a Brandon Sanderson title. I'm not going to say which one. I read 7 of them last year. I still have like 20 to go. But one of his books was easily fighting it out for worst book of the year. And I'll get more into that in my in-depth, very long Cosmere vlog that'll come to you probably in December. The actual worst book I'm going to talk about today is going to be The Will of the Many by James Islington. This book is pure vibes, pure fucking vibes, head empty, no thoughts. In theory, we are supposed to be in a fantasy world loosely inspired by the Roman Empire. So we're in this vaguely Roman Empire-y times, and we are following our main character. I think his name is Viz. He goes by Viz for most of the book. It's not his actual name, but that part doesn't matter. So we're following Viz. At the beginning of the book, we see this character, this High Lord, come down to this prison, and it's like everyone at the prison is kind of like, what's happening here? This is very unusual, but it is what it is. And a High Lord has come here because I think he's gotten word. One, he's there to see somebody who's actually in prison, so they talk to this imprisoned person. But after that, he runs into Viz, and Viz is this character who is a prison guard, but he also is like just about to get kicked out of his orphanage, and he is in an underground fight ring, and that's kind of how he pays his way at the orphanage, and he's like kind of squirreling some of that money away from himself, but not too much because it gets suspicious. Him being in the fight ring is also suspicious because he's just like super uber talented, and it's just a little bit sketchy and doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, but we're just kind of going along to get along. In the end, our mysterious visitor agrees or offers to adopt Viz because our mysterious visitor wants to kind of overthrow the empire that is happening here. And so Viz is like, orphanage being adopted by the wealthy man, orphanage being adopted by the wealthy man. It's also important to note that our main character is from, I think, kind of like a disposed palace place. So he has like some beef against the empire, and he's like, sure, whatever, bet. Fast forward, we are now at a school setting where no one can use the one thing that makes this world interesting. So aside from it being vaguely Roman inspired, the selling point of the magic of this world is that it is will-based. So if you conquer somebody, then they can surrender their will to you, and now you are more powerful and you can do more things. Interesting. But at the school, it is a lot of concepts and theory and no actual practical use of the interesting magic system that everyone will not shut up about. No one shuts up about how, the magic system is so fucking interesting, but it's not in use at the school. And we're at the school for most of the book. And we're also supposed to remember that Viz is supposed to be undercover. He's supposed to be acting like he's from some backwater place and was plucked out by our lovely mentor person from the beginning of the book, our mysterious visitor. And so everyone else at the school is kind of like the District 1 and 2 kids. Like, they are the legacies. They are really supposed to be there. And it's weird that Viz is there because he's not a District 1 and 2 person, right? Like, he is the outlier. But this man, again, because he's like a prince actually in disguise or whatever, he grew up. And so he has all this tutoring and all this knowledge. And he is constantly just like not being undercover. Like, it just makes no sense that his cover is not blown immediately. Like, he is the worst person to be at the school. So not only is he just like fucking stupid the entire book and constantly running out and doing things that would blow his cover, then we're not even using the actual factual magic system that makes this book interesting that no one will shut the fuck up about. And then the book is just boring. It's all vibes, no plot, it's head empty the entire fucking time. And so while this has like a 4.0 on it Goodreads, it's really, I think, on potential. Like, the potential of the series is there. Like, James Islington isn't an incompetent writer, but his characters are. Like, the characters are fucking stupid, which isn't, necessarily a bad thing. Stupid people exist. They deserve representation too. Like, stupid people rep, to the front, I guess. But overall, it's just like, what are we fucking doing? Like, what the fuck are we doing here? This was another book that I read for the patrons, and so it's in a vlog over there. So for $3, you can get access to that. I think it was like last March. No, it wasn't March because I did Women in March. Might have been last, I don't know when it came out. Maybe April. It was in the beginning part of the year. But yeah, it was a horrible book. Don't recommend it. I will not be continuing on with the series because, again, like, it's It's stupid to me. Like, it doesn't make any fucking, like, at one point, the school is like visiting where, like, the part of the kingdom where our main character used to live, and it's supposed to be brand new to everybody, and he's out here running around in the secret corridors, and there's like this one part of the book where a character is going to go swimming, and they're like, because they were down at the beach earlier in the day, and she's like, yeah, I'm gonna go swimming, and Viz hears that this person is going swimming, and he's like, oh my goodness, I have to save her because nobody knows that the tides actually are going to change at this precise hour, and she will be swept out to sea. And this is like, how would you know that? Like, there are parts of this book where characters just should die but Viz saves them because he knows stuff that they don't know. And it's just like, again, it was fucking incompetent. He's fucking stupid. So the people who like this book, I do question, like, what are we doing here? Like, the vibes, I guess, are, again, like, they're there. But at the end of the day, I do like competency. So those are the worst books I read in 2023. I really only hated the Sanderson and the James Islington of it all. Like, everything else feels fine in comparison to that, but I still wouldn't recommend any of you pick up any of these books. If you have read these books and you disagree, feel free to sound off in the comments, but I'm going to go. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you guys again soon. But until then, and until next time, bye.